the COVID-19 pandemic on Australian children is being felt hardest in the classroom. And it's causing a generation of what experts are now calling ghost students who are no longer turning up to school. 483,000 enrolled pupils attended less than 89% of learning days last year. That's a 44% increase on rates in 2018. 80,000 students are missing from the education system, with only 73%, as we can see there, now finishing Year 12. The data was released today in a 4-part series by The Advertiser exploring the really important issue called Lockdown Kids: How to Break a Generation. Richard Crawshaw is a former teacher who now heads Can't Face School, which specialises helping children go back to class. Richard, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Would you go as far to say that this is a crisis that isn't properly recognised right now?
It's a good question. I think that this has been around for a long time. But what we're seeing, I think, more now is this difference between kids who can't face school as opposed to kids who won't go to school. And there's a big difference there.
What's the big difference between that? Is that because they're suffering still anxiety, or what are the key differences between those two schools, I guess, of students?
Well, we're seeing that this anxiety, which is the main thing that's happening here, is very, very real for these kids. And it's a fact that a lot of kids do actually want to go to school, but they just can't. And they're trying, but there are so many barriers that come in with this anxiety that stop them from going.
What is the main factor behind that anxiety, do you think?
Well, it's a complex one. I think that we're seeing a lot of social anxiety and kids that have forgotten how to connect with other kids, and they've become quite scared about that. We're seeing some anxiety around academic performance and the expectations that have been put on them and whether they're good enough to be able to perform again. And we're seeing some anxiety around the future also, where kids who haven't been to school for 2 or 3 years are thinking, well, am I actually going to be able to contribute to society? Am I going to be able to get a job? Which is proving a huge challenge and a huge stress.
Richard, some people may say, as parents or carers, you just need to say to your children, you need to go back to school, enforce it. But it's not that simple, is it?
No, it's not. It's a very complex thing, and this certainly is nothing to do with what people might say bad parenting. This anxiety is very real, and it's very complex. I think that it's easy for us to have debates around what's caused this, whether that be lockdowns or COVID or society or system errors, but I'm more interested in what I'm seeing at the moment, and I'm seeing that there are a lot of families and a lot of kids who are struggling, and it doesn't have to be that way.
I'm glad you mentioned that with struggling, Richard, because it's not just socially and especially with the anxiety with mental health, but also it seems a growing number of students are really struggling academically because they did miss especially those formative, important years regarding a lot of education and learning.
Yeah, they did. It's very true. But the good news is that schools are addressing this, and schools know how to be able to approach and pitch education at a point where the learning can happen for these kids. I think once they're over the line to be able to get in there or to be able to learn again, then this is bread and butter for teachers, and they do this really, really well.
And so quickly, Richard, what is your solution to this? Because obviously it's a massive problem that's affecting a lot of students, a lot of teenagers, a lot of families. What's your solution?
Well, at Can't Face School, we focus a lot on positive relationships and coordinating all these things together for parents to make it easier for them. So we work with young people as well in helping build their self-esteem and their confidence and focus on their strengths. And we coach schools in looking at what are some of the interest-based approaches that they can have and some of the structures they can have at their end to be able to make that platform safe as possible for these kids to be able to attend again. And a lot of this is working with the parents and having that opportunity to change that narrative. An important thing is that parents, you don't need to do this alone. There is help available for you.
Richard, such an important story. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. For more on this important story, you can visit lockdownkids.com.au.